so good.
The Netflix adaptation of the Devil May Cry series has gotten a lot of very deserved criticism from people online, as well as some annoying shades of quote-unquote criticism from people who have made grifting their entire identity. But thankfully, we're past that point for at least a few more months. Sparta, save us when Season 3 drops. But one conversation I really haven't seen is about how the show utilizes its music. Now, to be fair, I have seen plenty of people complain about the show not using music from the games, like this is the Sonic movies all over again, and relying more on 2000s bangers as opposed to songs that actually are from the games that the show shares a name with. Although those conversations seemed to die down after Season 2 decided to use a song from DMC3 and use it so poorly that it just shut everyone up and made everyone wish that the show would just go away. But what I'm talking about is a bit different, in that I'm choosing to meet the show halfway, so to say. It's no secret that the likes of Limp Bizkit, Evanescence, and Papa Roach are 100% my taste in music, so it's not like I'm even against these songs being attached to Devil May Cry in some fashion. But, in my opinion, if you're going to use a licensed song, then you need to make it fit. It needs to work. It needs to be thematically appropriate. And sure, to the show's credit, it's not like they haven't made it work in places before. Season 1, in my opinion, utilized the song Last Resort by Papa Roach pretty damn well for that highway fight scene, which is still probably the coolest scene in the entire show, which yes, the music does help with.
Damn, he's cool.
But the show often misuses songs. Case in point, Guerrilla Radio. And look, I like that song as much as anyone else who has played a Tony Hawk game, but it is not the Rage Against the Machine song to use to accompany a scene where a character is beating the ever-loving shit out of what are essentially cops. Killing in the name is literally right there and is super obvious. Hell, it's not even like it's an obscure track from the band. But then again, I'm kinda convinced Guerrilla Radio was only used because it was in Tony Hawk, and thus is nostalgic to someone who grew up in the late 90s and early 2000s. Which, consistently, the show feels like it's trying to pander to that exact audience, so I don't feel entirely crazy for coming up with that theory. Another song suggestion for this scene I have is Sleep Now in the Fire, but that's a little more of an obscure pick compared to Guerrilla Radio or Killing in the Name. At least in my experience. I'm not against using licensed music. We've seen this sort of thing be done with great effect in other things like Hi-Fi Rush or Peacemaker. But the problem I have with how it's utilized in Netflix May Cry is all in execution. Because in this show, it often feels shallow, like it's only being done because 2000s bangers, and done with little intention outside of that. Like, case in point, the show using bodies of all songs for a scene where Virgil goes apeshit and starts absolutely bodying Darkcom soldiers. Like, to me, it feels like the thought process was entirely just, well, it's a nostalgic banger from the 2000s, and he is dropping bodies, which feels like it comes from the Suicide Squad 2016 school of using licensed music. Honestly, that movie kind of has this exact problem of using songs without much thought. Like, using Without Me by Eminem in a scene where the team suits up, which, like, look, I like that song, but also, I don't know, it feels like I could use any other rap song in the same scene and have the same amount of effect, which should not be the case for your needle drops. Needle drops, to me, should make it feel like the song is perfectly set to the scene. Like in Bullet Train when it uses Holding Out for a Hero, specifically a Japanese cover of that song. Like, yes, that's a song that's been in so many different movies, but it works in that scene. And don't even get me started on the Shrek 2 example, where that song is so famously used and covered for that movie, to such a point that I'm pretty sure there are people that associate that song with Shrek 2 before they associate it with the actual singer who originally made the song. That's a good needle drop. That's how you do it. Another example of how you do it is Perfect Drug by 9 Inch Nails, which felt perfectly chosen for Kale's theme during his boss fight in Hi-Fi Rush. I even kinda touched on its thematic connections a bit in my dedicated video on that game. But to paraphrase what I said back in 2023, the song can symbolize multiple things when attached to the context of Kale as a character, like his desire for control, but it could also represent how he is his own worst enemy, how he's thrown away his humanity, JoJo, in favor of feeding his ego and his vices, which, in this case, his vices are his lust for power and his desire to be more than human. And yes, streamer mode does replace the song with In a Blink, which is an original song composed for the game, but that same song is made with the same rhythm and a similar tone and vibe to Perfect Drug, which to me shows how much that song and its themes actually fit the boss fight. And also because the game is actually designed to be rhythm-based in some sense, so the battle themes still have to fit the rhythm of the songs they're replacing, but that's semantics. But overall, this thematic poignance separates the hi-fi rushes of the world from the Suicide Squads. Look, it's not as easy as having a song people know and attaching it to a scene. It has to connect to that scene in some way, emphasize its themes, and be more than just song you like, but here. Nothing in Netflix May Cry, to me, emphasizes this problem more than how the show went about handling My Immortal by Evanescence. Now, using an Evanescence song in Season 2 makes sense, given the band made a whole new song for this show. Likewise, Papa Roach made a new song for this season in the same way that they had Last Resort, one of their already existing songs, be in a scene from Season 1. They kind of traded roles between seasons. Also on the subject, Afterlife by Evanescence is a genuinely amazing song, and in my opinion, one of the group's best tracks overall. But back on track, My Immortal was not utilized well at all, in my opinion, and is arguably the most poorly done needle drop in the entire show so far. I mean, who knows? Season 3 might have even worse needle drops. Who knows? To set the scene quickly so you have context for those of you who clicked on a video about the show and didn't watch it, which might be a lot more of you than I hope. The song is used in a scene that takes place right after Dante and Mary get teleported away from Argus's hideout, and Lady is convinced that she's failed and that all is lost because Argus now has everything he needs to win. And this is where Dante reveals that, no actually, Argus does not have everything he needs because he switched the coin out with another one. And sure, I could use this moment to talk about how this bit of him switching the coins is unironically the show doing a plot beat from Devil May Cry 2 of all things, but infinitely worse and with like zero setup that the video game counterpart had. But I'm saving that whole conversation for my video on the show as a whole, which, by the way, I've decided to push back until Season 3 so that I can, cover the whole show, since now we know Season 3 is when the show ends. Anyway, Dante revealing that it's not over is enough for Mary to lose all sense of self and kiss the man. Now, I have no desire to dig into why I think this ship just straight up does not work in the context of this show with these versions of these characters, because again, saving it for the full video on the show, but I will dig into why I think using My Immortal to accent this scene just isn't it, Chief. My Immortal, the song in question, is actually already about something. Like most quote-unquote emo music. And that's a major reason I don't think it should have been used here. The song is, at its core, about loss, but specifically the loss of a loved one. Someone you've known for a long time. Someone where their lingering memory haunts you like a ghost. You're unable to move on because their impact on you is just so strong. The emotions that causes you to feel, which are so palpable, that they remain alive and well long after the person they're attached to is gone. The memories of them remain. They're all you have left of them now that they're gone. It's something very real, very human. It's called My Immortal because these feelings, these memories, this impact are all immortal to you, even if the person tied to them isn't. And so to me, attaching this song to a scene where two characters who haven't known each other for any longer than a year, if I'm being generous, kiss for the first time is just bizarre. These strong emotions of loss and love just don't exist here. Not with these two, and not in this scene. And ironically, I think the scene would have fit more if it had played in, say, just to give an example, a scene of Dante mourning Ienzo post his death in Season 1, because that is the one that the show established he has known for years. And Season 2 only further emphasized this point with a flashback where younger Dante is sporting Dino's jacket for some fucking reason. And I know I already mentioned how I'm okay with the show using licensed tracks, because I still am, but to throw this out there, Since the show is very much already in love with stealing all of Nero's stuff and giving it to other characters within the context of this show, why not just use Shall Never Surrender from Devil May Cry 4? Specifically the slower, more romantic parts of it, considering this scene is, meant to be romantic and emotionally powerful in the romantic sense. It would be a little more in line with the tone of this scene, even if it would still feel somewhat cheap because this show's versions of Lady and Dante lack the chemistry and build-up that would make that song feel meaningful to them, unlike Nero and Kyrie in DMC4, which is probably crazy to hear given how much of the game Kyrie's not actually in, but to DMC4's credit, it does a pretty good job overall of emphasizing how much Kyrie means to Nero throughout its entire plot, as she is not only what motivates him to fight, but is also the person he's the most afraid of rejecting him for being part demon. And hell, the game even makes it clear that she does care about Nero the same way for the scenes she's present for. But, with that all said, at least if the show had used Shall Never Surrender, it at least fit in like the broad emotional strokes of what this scene is, rather than My Immortal, which to me just stands out like a sore thumb because of what the song's actually about, not lining up with what the scene it's presenting is about. There's a disconnect. It doesn't feel like the song for this scene. It feels like some poorly thought together AMV that you only made because you're currently bumping to this song and this show is what you like right now. Which could describe a couple AMVs from the past, but at least those are made by children who had heart. Now, with all of this said, I feel like there's going to be at least one person who, for one reason or another that I cannot fathom, will want to write off my point here because there's no way you can make My Immortal work as a needle drop because it's too sappy and melodramatic. And ignoring how much I'd be confused by someone with that kind of mindset watching a video of mine, considering how vulnerable I am on a regular basis, I want to argue that I don't think that's true. My Immortal can be used genuinely and honestly to a great effect to emphasize emotions of a scene rather than feel like it's at odds with the scene in question. I have two examples of media where I think they used My Immortal as a needle drop to better effect than this show. Specifically, 2023's Twisted Metal and 2003's Daredevil. Starting with Daredevil, the song is utilized as a needle drop to accent a funeral scene. It continues to play in the back as Matt tries to connect with and sympathize with Elektra. Matt's "I know how you feel" immediately being cut by her going "you don't know how I feel" just says it all to me, really. Specifically how strong Elektra's feelings of loss are in this moment, which is only made more obvious when she states her desire for revenge. By the way, around that point in the scene, the song starts to get kind of echoey and is accented itself by thunder. Matt tries to explain that revenge won't make the pain go away, making it even more clear how much he meant the statement of he knows how she feels because he's been there. But she's so lost in grief and rage that she can't see that. She can't see how genuine he's being right now. And this, to me, is already a much better use of the song, as it ties way better into the themes of the song itself, as opposed to Netflix May Cry. And let me remind you all, this is Daredevil 2003, the same movie where that goofy playground fight happens, and the same movie that utilizes Bring Me to Life, a different Evanescence song, in a much sillier way, including a bit where they close in on Matt's face with the lyrics, "All of this time, I can't believe I couldn't see," are sung at you. Like, that's silly, that's goofy, that's bad almost. But despite those factors, this movie does a better job at utilizing My Immortal as a needle drop thematically than the show based on Devil May Cry, a game series that I'd argue is exceptionally smart when it comes to its themes and emotional maturity overall. Then again, isn't exactly following in the footsteps of its namesake super well in the first place, especially not in that regard. My other example, Twisted Metal, is a more recent example, and, conveniently, is another streaming series adapting a video game franchise that, at least at one point in DMC's case, was exclusive to the PlayStation platform. In its scene, the song is used to communicate to the audience how John, the show's main lead, feels post the loss of Evelyn, who, by the way, is his car. This is accented by showing flashbacks to him as a kid fixing her up for the first time, making her his, and having those scenes parallel his present of holding the charred remains of what's left of her, left of his baby. This wasn't just a car to him, this was his car. The one that he put together, the one that he made his own. And that connection, that meaningful bond, is not only communicate greatly to the audience to the point where I feel like even without hearing the song and just watching the footage that's on screen right now, you could still get a clear idea of how much John cared for this car. But the song feels like it was chosen to emphasize those feelings and communicate them stronger, emphasize these emotions, and help so much with putting the audience into the headspace of him and his loss. The song can be used as a needle drop, and be used well, in fact. It just has to be used in scenes where they actually understand what the song is about and the emotions it's trying to convey. My Immortal is not a romantic song. It's not the song to pick for a scene like Mary kissing Dante for the first time after being spurred on by strong emotions of relief and love. Hell, the lyrics that play when Lady kisses him don't even fit either, even on a surface level. But Though You're Still With Me is sung when Dante says, "Now we can do it together." And the kiss happens during the next line, "I've been alone all along." Which, like, for that line specifically, I could maybe see someone make an argument for it being connected to Lady finally realizing just how alone she's been since the loss of her family, pushing away everything including her morals in pursuit of getting revenge on the demons that took everything from her. But that connection, while plausible to argue, rings hollow to me when A, the rest of the song lacks a similar level of reinterpretation in my opinion for the scene, and B, I don't feel like the show has done enough by this point to make me feel that sense of connection with its version of Mary emotionally. And yes, I know that second point is definitely more subjective than the first one, but given this is a subjective opinion piece video, like all of my videos are, and like most videos on this platform are, even if the people making them don't always realize it, I still feel like it's worth mentioning. In general, the Dante and Lady kiss scene kind of embodies everything I dislike about Season 2 of Netflix May Cry. It kind of highlights issues that have existed since the start, even back in Season 1 when I had fun with the show despite all its faults. The scene feels shallow all around. Dante and Lady's kiss here feels unearned to me, because in 2 seasons of television I feel unconvinced by their bond in this canon. I do not believe that their relationship is strong enough for this scene to feel natural at all, which, by the way, is crazy given DMC3 made their relationship feel so much more fully realized and three-dimensional in the span of one game's plot, and they didn't even intend to necessarily ship the two in that story. But that's the thing, isn't it? That dynamic, those interactions, that bond that grew over the course of that game was enough to fuel so much fan art, fanfiction, the whole 9 yards, because that's generally what starts ships in fandoms. When there's something to latch onto, something to get emotionally connected to, or resonate with, or think about, or fantasize about, it fuels people's passion and creativity. Netflix May Cry, on the other hand, just feels like it's trying to ride on the coattails of people's already existing connection with these characters and their ship from the games, while forgetting that it can't really do that if it's trying to create its own canon and be its own thing. The slate is clean when you make a new story with a new universe and a new canon. In this show, in its universe, there's nothing, so you have to build up this version of Dante and Lady's relationship like it's brand new. And you have to do that for a scene like this to feel earned and meaningful to an audience. It doesn't feel like the song was carefully chosen to emphasize and enhance the scene and its themes, but rather was chosen because it's a nostalgic 2000s banger that people like, with a cool beat drop that you can sync to the kiss. I have, unironically, seen non-Disney MEPs use this song more fittingly and more meaningfully than this show does. The strongest emotional hook for Season 1, in my opinion, was the White Rabbit, who is essentially a character from the DMC3 manga that the show anamorphed into an OC, and is easily the show's best written character by a country fucking mile. But outside of him, the first season seemed more focused on doing aura and hype moments with Dante fighting random demons from across the series for most of its runtime. I do look forward to digging more into the White Rabbit as a character next year when I cover the show as a whole, but again, we're not there yet. Season 2, meanwhile, is constantly punching above its weight class and kind of failing to deliver on any of those beats. I focused this video around this scene specifically because 1, I wanted to talk about how My Immortal was poorly used in the show while also bringing up examples where it was utilized more fittingly to prove my point, and 2, because it embodies why I think this show fails, not just as an adaptation but as a story on its own. Netflix May Cry is all smoke and mirrors. It's all talk and no action. It's a shallow pond masquerading as a deep ocean. It doesn't say anything meaningful about its characters. It doesn't really do anything to add to the conversations of subjects like the War on Terror, despite drawing parallels to that to such a point that it's literal parody. Because how else would you describe setting a scene of the US government bombing a foreign world set to Green Day's Goddamn American Idiot other than parody? And it certainly doesn't do anything truly inspired or meaningful with its music choices, which are the focus of this video. Because it's either needle drops like American Idiot, where they feel super obvious and ham-fisted and surface level, or they're needle drops like My Immortal, where it doesn't even fit the scene it's in. It's just hollow. And next year, when Season 3 drops and we have the full show from beginning to end, I'll be able to dig more into why that is. But for now, I've been the Mistress Dove, and I hope you enjoyed this spur-of-the-moment video that came to me. And until next time, may your hearts be your guiding keys.